So here's a quick overview of this setup that I have. I have my dial indicator on the intake push rod. I was talking about that. You could either measure it here. I find with the tip of the dial indicator being right at that push rod, I don't have to worry about the ratio of the rockers. Again, that's 1.6. I can just measure it directly from the cam lobe. So I just have a pretty simple setup there. That was pretty easy to do. Then around here you can kind of see that I have it zeroed out. So that's the intake, and I'll do the exhaust next. Now here's the other part. I'm going to try to get as good an angle as I can. I put the Summit dial, again, there's probably lots of different dials that you can buy, but I just bought this Summit one. I think it was like 23 bucks. It didn't come with a solid lifter and all that other stuff. It was just the dial. My hanger, and that's my pointer. I actually do have it at 0 right now, so I already put it at top dead center. And I know it's on the compression stroke because I also have my distributor cap off, and I know that that is on the top of the compression stroke between the compression and the power stroke. So let me see if I can get a good shot of this. You can see my timing mark there. Right there, I'll try to get a little bit closer, but you can see the timing mark, and that actually is at 0. So I know this is at top dead center. I've already used a piston stop to confirm that my balancer is not spun and that it's right on there. It's the second mark. It just looks like it's off because it's off an angle. But let me see if I can get a... So if you look at that right there, again, the correct angle would be about here, and that is right at that second mark. I can see it better from my position, but that is at 0. And so I put my marker. Again, I just have a coat hanger right here. Again, it's a tight spot, but see, it's right at 0. So I just have that tip of it pointing right at 0. And I'm going to show the bolts down here. Again, this is how I have the bolts. I just used the 3 bolts that the pulley connects into the harmonic balancer. There were already 3 holes in the timing wheel, so I'm just using those. So that fit right over there. It's centered nicely. And also a bonus from that is I did not have to pull out the main bolt for the crankshaft that holds on the harmonic balancer, because you do have to push that counterclockwise, and I didn't want it to... Wanted to get a closer look at the Summit wheel because I had already installed it when I started the video. So there's the wheel. Again, I was just measuring the degrees around there. It's a little bit of a pain because it goes to only 180, and I was trying to measure both sides, but not too much math there. It does try to help you out with some of the intake and exhaust relative ranges. So this is the pulley that goes over the harmonic balancer, and again, the bolt for the crankshaft goes right there. These bolts here hook the pulley to the balancer. I used just 1 inch because it's not a flat surface. Our harmonic balancer is not a flat surface to connect to. Had to screw them in just the right amount to keep this relatively flat. So it actually does come with these inserts depending on what the size of the bolt that goes into your crankshaft. So you can kind of see it goes like that, and that way you can put the crankshaft bolt over it. But again, I just thought this was much easier because when that is over it, it sits a little bit proud and the wheel here would spin. And so anyway, this was just much easier. I didn't have to undo that bolt at all. I could have it torqued down, and it worked out pretty well. And it just missed the water pump, so you don't have to take the water pump off, nothing else, just the front fan and the pulley, and you're good to go. So from the vantage point up here, I can make out pretty well within a degree of where that tip is going to be. So I'll read out what I'm saying down there as I take a look at the dial gauge. You're just going to have to trust me on that one. Highly recommend taking out the spark plugs because it's much harder to turn with the spark plugs in there because of the compression. Again, what I showed in part 1 was all these numbers here. And I need to confirm this 112. Again, I was pretty shoddy with it. I did the actual measurements for the intake and exhaust without even looking at the cam card. I just wanted to go through real quickly, and I was amazingly surprised at how close I got to what the cam card said. Again, in part 1, I go through all those numbers and where those come from. But I'm 5 degrees off here. My guess is that top of the lobe, that's that center line, intake center line, is supposed to be 107. I got 112. It's flat there. It's almost flat there for a little bit, and you'll see it. I'm going to move it back and forth and try to be a little bit more precise with the dial indicator. I just saw it, it kind of stopped going up. It started going down, so I just measured the degrees at that point. My guess is it actually is 107, and I just need to confirm that, because that 4 and that 210 that I measured independently were spot on. So I think the 112 is just off. And then the same here, 139 within 1 degree, 352 within 1 degree. I think that 240 was just a little bit of slop on my part. So I'm just going to reconfirm that it's actually closer to 245. I mean, everything is close enough that I know that the camshaft was ground pretty darn closely to the camshaft specs. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So hopefully that's a pretty good angle. You can see I already got it zeroed out. I have it at top dead center, so I know that the exhaust and the intake valves are closed, or I'm off the lobe. So I know that for a fact. And I'm at 0 on the dial. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this. Now in the intake, the 107 is at the top, and that's what I'm trying to confirm. Again, this is a full rotation all the way around, so I'm going to spin it a whole 360 degrees, and actually I should start seeing it open at 326. So that's not, the cam card doesn't give you that, but I know that from my previous ones that it starts to open at 326, and then at a full revolution plus 4 degrees, I'm going to be at 50 thousandths of lift, and then I'll go to that max part. Once I get to 100 or there, I'll slow down quite a bit, 100 degrees, and really try to dial that in and just make sure that it's 107 and not 112. I'm pretty sure it is, but I'm just going to use this for illustration purposes. So we're going to go to 326 degrees to see the intake start to move. So it's whenever this thing starts to move, when the dial starts to move up, is at 326. So we're going to I'm seeing it starting to move there. All right, where are we? Just to confirm that 326. So I think I went past it. Again, I kind of get why they do the measurements at 50 thousandths, because where it exactly starts, just from the grinding, I can see there's probably a lot more inaccuracy with that number, because it's really hard to see if that needle is even moved. I'm in the neighborhood of that 326 that I had measured before, so I'm just going to leave that as is. Again, that doesn't play as much into it. Okay, so I'm going to keep turning. So that 326, again, I'm going to do a quick look at this. That 326, that's what I was measuring. I was almost a full rotation around. Now I know that once I go past 0, I'm going to go about 4 degrees past, and that should be right at 50 thousandths lift. So that's what we're going to take a look at here. We're going to see the dial indicator going up. We're looking for the exact degrees at 50. I'm just slowly turning. Right, that's spot on at 50. and I'm at 4 degrees. So that 4 number is correct. And I had mentioned this before, that 4 degrees is spot on from the cam card. So I know that I am dot to dot. So just going through that first step at 50 thousandths using the cam card or whatever is stock for your engine, you can make sure that your cam has not skipped a tooth. So that's one way to do that without having to take off your timing cover. Again, that's a big mess. So that is a way to confirm that you have not skipped a tooth. Of course, if you have a really loose timing chain, it may be off some, but I wouldn't think it'd be off as much as a skipped tooth if it's just a little loose. All right, so that's 50 thousandths, and really what we're trying to confirm is that 107 mark. So I'm going to go another 103 degrees. We're going to see what happens here. We're going to try to get that perfect center line, top of the lobe. And we'll be hitting that at about 287. So 287 thousandths of an inch is where the top of the lobe is. So we can take a look at the gauge here and kind of follow that around. Right now it's at 50, 100, 200, 270. All right, I know that 289 is what it is. So we're going to take a look at that and just see, is it still going up? Yeah, it's hard to measure. Okay, it's still going up. We're at 280 almost. Still going up, still going up. We should start seeing it slow down here pretty soon. All right, I've stopped turning it. What are we at? 285, 285 and a half. Still going up, still going up. All right, I've stopped. Let's see. 287. 287 and change. All right, I'm just moving at 1 or 2 degrees, and you can kind of see it's not moving at all. So there's definitely some play in there. And again, it's supposed to be 107. So I'm at about 105 right now. Again, it stopped moving. So I'm a couple degrees where it just stopped moving. I'm moving at 1 or 2 more degrees right there now. A little bit more. See, it's not moving. I'm moving it. I'm seeing a little bit of starting to waver a little bit. Okay, it started to go down now. So there's a fair amount of flat space on there. I'm at 112 right now, and I started seeing it go down. So I know that it was before that, because it was probably flat for about 10 degrees. So I'm gonna call it pretty darn close to 107. So that would mean that we'll start to see it. I'm gonna move it backwards actually. It starts moving at 5 degrees past. I'm gonna move it 5 degrees before. And that's so there's about a 10 degree slush in there, but let's confirm that. I'm gonna move it back. See, it's not moving at all. Oh, yep. So maybe it's right about there. So I should be at about 102. And I'm at 103. So there is about a 10 degree movement of the wheel where it's flat on top of the lobe. So if you are doing this, that center line, you basically need to find where it stops going up and where it starts going down. That'll be about a 10 degree difference. In the middle of that will be the actual center line. So that is good to know. So apparently when I did this before, I put the 112 when it started going back down, so I was 5 degrees past. So I just measured it, and I got a range from 103 to 112 is where it's basically flat at maximum lift. So hopefully that's helpful, and that's a little bit of relief that that 112 is actually 107. So that cam card is spot on. Now, just for fun, we're going to go back on the back side of it, and that 210, I'm just going to confirm that 210 again. The 4 was good, so I'm pretty darn sure that the 210 is going to be correct. So we're going to go back to 50 thousandths. So I'm going to keep rotating around until I hit that. I should start seeing it come back down. Yep. 200. 100. Remember, we're going back down to 50, and we're going to measure that, and that should be 210. 210 degrees. A little past it. Oh. This thing's hard to get exactly right. There. All right, that's exactly 50 thousandths. I should be reading 210. Okay, looking at the camera, I am right at 209, 209 and a half. And I'm right at 50 thousandths, right down here. And then again, I went ahead and measured before the closes at, again, that's not that relevant, but that 264, so another 54 degrees, and it should be closed at that point. Just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and measure that 264. So I'm just going to spin it around until the dial indicator equals 0. Again, this is on the second rotation around. There's 720 total degrees. Again, I moved that around quite a bit. It is really hard to get the starting point. The 50 thousandths was pretty easy to read. There was even movement along there. So again, I think that's much easier. I'm right now at, I'm right at about 265, 266. Again, this thing was kind of hard. There's a lot of play in there on the degrees. But that all checks out. So all my actual numbers are pretty spot on with the camshaft. I'm going to go ahead and I know this isn't the most exciting thing in the world, so I'm going to go ahead and do the exhaust, set up the exhaust, and just kind of do a little faster run through of the exhaust numbers, but I imagine I'm going to find the same thing. Here, that 111, 139, 240, 351, that's all on the first rotation, so I'm actually going to go back to top dead center on stroke number 1 on the top of the power stroke. And I'm going to go from there. The intake, those are all in the second rotation. So how we looking here? I'm going to reset it to 0. Oh, that's pretty darn close. And I'm trying to make sure that the push rod is lined up exactly with the dial indicator. A couple thousandths off, I'm not too worried about it, because actually so far it's been pretty accurate on. I was wondering when I first started this, how accurate could it be with variations in how the push rod is oriented, the angle, where I put the dial indicator, that sort of thing, but this thing is, it's reassuring that all the numbers are spot on. So again, we're going to start off, and we're going to go to 111 degrees, and that should be about when we start to see the dial indicator move. Alright, the dial indicator just started moving. I'm right at about 111. Again, this is when it starts to open, and that matches what I had measured before, less important than the 50 thousandths number, so we're going to move it to 50 now as the next. $20, $30, $40, $50. We're at 139 degrees, 138 and a half, 139. Spot on again. All right, let's move to the top, and that's going to be right at 303. So we're going to move to get to 303 on the dial. All right, 100, 200. And we're going to wait till it gets to the highest point. All right, it started going down now. That's interesting. It was actually, it's a little, let's move it back a little bit. That's right about, well, that's 297. That's actually a little less than I had before. And it's supposed to be on the cam card 303. But let's jimmy that back and forth just a little bit. See if we can't find that top. The play here is a little less than, it was like 10 degrees on the intake. Yeah, I don't think that's where, I'm just moving it back and forth a little bit. So that's right about, it's right about in between that top spot. Yeah, right now without even, we're at about 244. And yep, I think that was, and then that actually, take a look, 245. I had done 240 before. Again, it was a little bit sloppy. I just kind of did it real quickly. I'm a little bit more dialed in right now, and I'm at 244. So we're going to call that 245. So that exhaust center line, again, max lift, top of the lobe, is at 244 degrees. So I can update that number there. So I'm right in there. Second time measurement around, I got a little bit closer to that 245. So I think we are good there. Again, just for fun, we're going to measure the 50 thousandths closing at 351. So this one here, the 351, 352, and then down to 40 when it totally closes. All right, so we're going to keep rotating around. It's going to go back down. That's 200, 100, and we're going to get down to, oh, I went past it, 50. All right, pretty close, reasonably close. And I'm at 350. And that is right there, spot on, within a degree. All right, now we should start to see it close when we get 40 past into the second rotation. Yeah, in fact, it's before that. I'm not even at the 40 yet, and it stopped moving. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, it's in the 41, 42, 43 range, somewhere in there. Again, exactly when it closes is not that big a deal. My dial indicator must have gotten off a little bit, because it's reading past 0. Again, some little shifting here and there. It just goes to show you some of the variations, and I didn't really move anything on here. So when I said it wasn't quite up to 3, it was about 298 thousandths on the lift. This probably accounts for it. So I was probably right at 300. Again, the cam card says 303. I was at 300. So that's it. So that's all the markings. Again, go back to episode 1 if you want to walk through of the measurements here. These are what I actually got and what the cam card told me for each of the intake and exhaust. And again, it's pretty simple. I just kind of rotate it around. Again, I prefer the measuring of each of the 5 points when it starts to open. opens to 50, max center line, closes to 50, completely closed. Just kind of following that whole logical movement across the lobe there, just so that I can better understand what's going on here. If you're a professional, obviously you don't need to do that. This stuff is second nature. You're just reading the numbers, you know where to go. I did all this because I really wanted to better understand the travel along the lobe and how the two intake and exhaust interacted against the strokes. And I think I have a much better feel for how the whole thing works out. And again, you can do it with the engine in. The Summit wheel, I'd recommend it, but I'm sure there's other ones you could use. And that's about it.